Welcome. We are joined here again for another episode of our sustainability series from Nasdaq Market Site in Times Square, New York City. My name is Evan Harvey. I'm the head of sustainability for Nasdaq, and we're very pleased today to be joined by Robert Dornow, the Director of Sustainability Services for RobecoSAM, and we're going to talk about the Dow Jones Sustainability Index and a few other things. Robert, thanks very much for coming.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
Yes, we've been doing this for a few years now. Nasdaq is happy to participate in the DJSI process. For those of the viewers who may not know, what is the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, CSA in particular? How long has it been around, and what does it measure in terms of corporate performance?
The DJSI, Dow Jones Sustainability Indices, are a collaboration between RobecoSAM and S&P Dow Jones Indices. They started in 1999, so almost 20 years, and select the world's leading companies based on their sustainability performance, and that is measured through RobecoSAM's Corporate Sustainability Assessment, or CSA. We're looking in that in all three dimensions of sustainability, including the economic, social, and environmental aspects.
Does the economic, social, and environmental correspond to the traditional ESG categories that we see elsewhere in sustainability reporting? Is it pretty much the same categorization that you use?
Well, the S and the E for environmental and social, yes. The G, in our view, is extended to economic. So governance is a part of economic, but it also includes issues like innovation management, supply chain management, risk and crisis management, a broader view on the economic dimension.
Excellent. The participation in the CSA is invitation-based, correct? So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the number of companies that are invited and the number of companies that make the cut for inclusion. We know that a couple of dozen Nasdaq companies have made the list this year in various regional indexes and in the world, but how many make it in total?
Okay. We invite the world's largest companies by definition of their free float asset capitalization. For DJSI World, we invite the 2,500 largest, and then for different regions like North America, we invite the 600 largest. So we start at Apple and count down to 600, and that's where the cutoff is.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
I have seen in our work here with sustainability and listed companies, the emergence of several key themes over the last couple of years, notably human rights lately. How does the DJSI CSA methodology evolve over time to account for these changes in the space? Is it a pretty flexible methodology, and what did you have to change this year in order to capture these emerging trends?
Yeah, well, it's a very broad approach. So we ask companies about 20 different criteria or themes in those three dimensions. We ask on average 120 questions per industry in 60 different industry-specific questionnaires. And what companies value in the assessment, the ones that participate, is that we keep them on their toes. We help them develop their strategy. And so each year, about 10-15% of the questions change, either because we change the question angle. We might move from asking, can you identify a risk, to can you quantify it? Have you set a target? What's your KPI towards the target? Or we introduce new criteria, like most recently, policy influence.
We know from experience that the process is fairly rigorous and comprehensive. Do you have a guess, we didn't talk about this beforehand, but do you have a guess about how much time and effort companies invest in the application process for the CSA?
That's a question we asked companies, and what they told us is that they need between 100 and 200 hours of time that splits across several people that participate.
Right. What are your observations, Robert, generally about the state of ESG reporting, both in terms of the CSA and in the markets generally? We have an impression here that it is becoming better, more comprehensive, more common for corporates to report their ESG or the sustainability performance of their company. What are you seeing from your perspective? Is that something that's reflected in the number of applicants to the CSA and the DJSI?
We saw a great increase in number of companies that participate last year. So we invite 3,500 of the largest companies, and 942 participated last year. That's an increase of 9% over the year before. And a particular increase in the US of 25 new companies that participated. So what we see is increasing interest, and as a general what we see is, and what we also ask in the questionnaire, is for companies really to look outside of their own operations, deeper into their supply chain, deeper into their impacts, their externalities that they have as a company. How do they impact the world outside of their factory doors?
Was the U.S. the largest geographic increase this year?
Together with Japan.
Together
yes.
with Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So Nasdaq has been very happy to be selected for a couple of years for the North American Index. We have several companies in the Nasdaq universe that have been selected for the DJSI World Index in 2017, including Staples, Adobe, Cisco in the US, Sandvik and Electrolux in Sweden, UPM in Finland. How does a company qualify for the World Index? Is there a significant disclosure or performance gap between inclusion in the regional index and the World Index?
Yeah. For World Index, you have to be in the top 10% of companies. And for the regional indices, you have to be in the top 20% headquartered in that region. So there could be an overlap. It could be that you are in both indices, World and the regional index, where you're headquartered, or just in one.
How many companies make the World Index?
There
ballpark?
are 319 members in World,
okay.
and 50 out of those are US companies.
50, okay.
Yeah.
Has, I don't know, I'm improving a little bit here, but has that number for the US changed much, or has that been fairly fixed?
I don't know by heart, Evan. I could have looked it up.
We're just going to assume that US companies are doing terrifically. So finally, we're all aware of several converging global work streams around sustainability. So lately we have the awareness about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are looking at corporate activities driving towards a 2030 capital infrastructure development agenda. We have the recent recommendations from the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, the TCFD, and what their recommendations are for companies to be more forthcoming around their environmental performance in particular. How does RobecoSAM contribute to this sort of wave of activity and understanding and transparency around ESG and sustainability? Is Robeco and the CSA, are they helping to drive capital into more sustainable directions?
Well, the CSA and DJSI have been a compass for investors for almost 20 years now, and they look towards the index to identify sustainability leaders in this area. We have recently widened the application of the scores to Bloomberg, where we publish a company ranking, not just the top 10%, but really all the companies we do assess. And it's not just the companies that participate, but we do assess another 2,000 companies based on public information. And what we, of course, do with the CSA is to try to measure the SDGs as well. We have included that in one of the questions for companies to tell us what SDGs they focus on, and particularly the impact measurement and impact valuation question really drives data in that area and companies' transparency about how they impact the world.
Terrific. Thank you very much for joining us. We're looking forward to having you back again, maybe for a ceremony where we include some of the companies from the Nasdaq World that were included this year. And thank you for your continued effort in the space.
Thank you, Evan.
And we will join you again next time for another episode of our sustainability series.